The first big one that we're going to look at is to do with the looming under 16 social media ban that's taking place with effect 7 next Wednesday, the 10th of December. However, as we'll find out rolling through this, there's some websites that are already enforcing the ban, starting to ban under 16 accounts already, primarily Meta/Facebook groups. And then there's a bunch of pushback that's coming in from around the place, and there's also some broader online safety, online surveillance type stuff that people are getting concerned about. And it's largely in the domain of conspiracy at the moment, but those conspiracy groups and people can be something of a canary in the coal mine. And they've started appearing. I mean, they've probably been talking about it for ages, but they've started appearing in the last couple of weeks a lot more in just general news feeds, suggesting that there's more doom and gloom coming down the pipe. But it's the sort of stuff that's been talked about for a while. Now, one of the things that is impacting, or the push behind the under 16 media ban, social media ban, apart from how unequal, how much inequity there is in how it's being applied, is this idea that rampant access to social media is poor for mental health, or poor for health. And there was a couple of studies that have been cited by the e-safety commissioner and the communications minister that is the main impetus, well, what they claim is the main impetus for the ban coming through. I've spoken to some psychologists and people involved in mental health, and they do agree that limiting access to social media, and in particular for teenagers, is a good idea, but maybe that a ban isn't the best way to go about it. It takes away agency. But anyway, one of the things that came up a couple of weeks back now, on the 24th, was an article here on news.com.au talking about how there was a study that showed that users were less depressed after deleting Facebook, which obviously Meta wouldn't want that to be widely shown because, well, it's suggesting people are happier when they don't engage in their services. We'll just skip past Jacinta Allen for the time being. So, they did a study in 2020. Scientists from Meta partnered with Nielsen, so that's the TV ratings firm, was media engagement ratings firm, to assess the effects of temporarily deactivating Facebook. I don't know what Meta were expecting. I mean, it says the results were not what the company had hoped for. I guess the company hoped that people felt disengaged and lost by deactivating Facebook and things like that. Yet the general consensus seems to be, or the general vibe seems to be, that people don't walk away in general with a positive feeling from social media. So even though it's only a week, people stopped using Facebook for a week, reported lower feelings of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and social comparison. Okay, so less social comparison, that makes sense. Depression, anxiety, and loneliness. That's a bit weird, because you'd expect social media, the idea behind social media is to engage, is to create groups, like-minded people, to communicate with other people that you like, or who are like you. And so it's about building community. Yet it would imply that the opposite is happening. While there may be communities being formed, people don't feel engaged with it. Meta cancelled additional work and internally claimed the negative outcomes were skewed by the existing media narrative surrounding the platform. Now, 2020 is after Cambridge Analytica, where Facebook / Meta, metadata, was used by political campaigns in the US for the presidential elections. So some people were a bit upset about that. But there's been a push against, widespread overreaching efforts by social media companies for ages. Now, 2020 was also an interesting time because you're now looking at potentially bringing into consideration the impact of COVID, and that people in lockdown really were limited in how they could stay engaged with others. And so social media becomes that. How much of what they're looking at was impacted by the broader environment? This statement here at the end, though, is about it having disastrous effects on mental health, particularly in youth. We're seeing this as the big push for why this under 16 social media ban is going ahead. All right, blah, blah, blah. A little bit of, not rhetoric, what is rhetoric? I don't know, I can't remember the exact word for it, but the idea that you've got a comparison between social media firms and the tobacco industry doing research, finding out cigarettes were bad and keeping it to themselves. A social media company researching social media, finding it's bad and not saying anything. Well, there's no obligation to release research, particularly when it's an internal product. So, despite its own internal data linking its products to adverse mental health effects, Meta told US Congress it lacked a way to quantify potential harm to teenage girls. And so you're seeing this is, each of these statements is adding fuel to the fire for why, well, under 16s are soon going to be off social media. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, school districts suing Meta, Google, TikTok, and Snapchat. I'm sure there'll be more coming out down track as well. Mr. Zuckerberg also shut down or ignored requests by Nick Clegg, Meta's then head of global public policy. I wonder if that's the former British politician, to better fund child safety work, which is telling that if you've had the issue raised to you and you do nothing about it, you can't claim ignorance. It then implies an intent if you then decide not to proceed or to proceed in the other direction. Asserting that Meta's teen safety measures are effective and the company now removes accounts. Well, it distorts Meta's effort to develop safety tools for parents and teens, calling its work broadly effective. Well, the Australian government is going to go through with a path that's a lot more a lot more severe. And an Australian study showed that self-reported mental health scores dropped 11% for females and 7% for males between 2011 and 2022, alleging that the decline is linked to photo and video sharing platforms and social media. Given that there'd been but in the very next paragraph, it says, well, okay, mental health has been relatively stable before, falling rapidly after 2012, but there is no causation linkage. It's correlation at the moment. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's one of those things that you're probably never really going to find a true answer. So that was something that had come out a little while ago, like a couple of weeks ago, which was, I guess it's peripherally related. Like I said just before, the media ban doesn't go into effect until next Wednesday. But Meta, i.e. Facebook, has already started excluding under the 16s, deleting accounts, blocking them out from their accounts on Insta and Facebook. And it's a week before the official ban begins. Now, why specifically they're doing that, don't quite know why they're going in advance. They did tell users that this was coming, so it's not unexpected, but for it to rapidly appear as such. So 150,000 Facebook users, 350,000 Instagram accounts. Now, we talked last set of videos about the number of users related to that. Threads is linked to Instagram, and yep, okay, there's no detail. The fines aren't changing. Yep, compliance with the law will be an ongoing and multi-layered process. While Meta is committed to complying with the law, we believe a more effective, standardized and privacy-preserving approach is needed, which is in line with what Google and a bunch of other companies have been saying as well. App stores to verify age of users when they download apps and ask for parental approval for under 16s. Now, some of this stuff isn't much different to legislation that's already been around in the US, like COPPA. The boundaries that are already in place for under 13s and use of parental consent, things like this. So for a lot of those sort of systems that have had to comply with COPPA, it's almost just a tweaking of those systems to capture the 16 and under crowd. Now, question though is whether an account created for an under 13 under COPPA legislation is acceptable for an under 16 under the Australian legislation. I mean, it seems that it's not. It seems that it's just a blanket. You cannot have an account. In Google terms, YouTube, okay, so they're banned from growing up YouTube, but under 16s can access kids' YouTube. So I guess there's a pathway there. It's also going to be interesting too, because a lot of school systems use Chromebooks as their student laptops as such, and so they've obviously linked to a Chromium OS and a Google ecosystem, and so you're going to have student accounts that are tied into Google accounts, education type accounts. Now, there was no discussion, I've not seen discussion about how they're going to be managed, because fundamentally they are Google accounts and have access to Gmail and a variety of other bits and pieces as well. Are they going to be age restricted more so? Or because they're a student type account, it's easier to corral them? I don't know. I guess we'll see next Wednesday. Which, interestingly, comes at the end of term 4 for a lot of Australian schools. So we're now going into the Christmas summer holidays. So we're not going to see a lot of students accessing their student accounts until probably February, March. I mean, most schools won't go back until February, late January, early February. And so any impact to how these student accounts are set up and managed probably won't be felt until much later, which is going to be interesting. Okay, so yep, basically telling the account holders they can download and save their data before the accounts are deactivated. If they believe they've been wrongly categorized, they can ask for a review and submit a video selfie. So in other words, you're going to have to start showing, well, personally sensitive information. You can also provide a driver's license or government-issued identification. There's no discussion there about who, a data store, who's going to be looking after that information. And you're now adding more and more sensitive information to link accounts to real people and everything else. It's just like, all right, we're not getting anything new here. Will it work? Well, there's articles coming up shortly. Okay, no other changes, no new information there. Okay, Communications Minister Annika Wells said that she's expecting teething problems in the first few days and weeks, but it was about protecting Gen Alpha, anyone under 15 years, and future generations. With one law, we can protect Gen Alpha from being sucked into purgatory by the predatory algorithms. I'm still stunned that they think they can get out and make statements like this and no one's going to care, or that people are going to be completely support them. There were efforts back in the mid-2000s to do very similar sorts of things. Maybe not specifically under 16 social media ban, but in terms of restricting access to internet content. And that failed spectacularly because at the time, people who understood the technology were able to advocate effectively about how unrealistic the proposals were. In this case, it just seems that the technology people who really do understand the tech underlying everything have been ignored in favour of special interest groups or service providers who, well, are quite happy to sell snake oil to the government. Wells also said they were closely watching lesser-known apps. Right. I don't think kids are going to migrate to these other apps. There is some grumbling that platforms like Blue Sky are not being impacted by this round of bans, especially given the type of content that appears on Blue Sky and, well, how unmoderated it is and everything else. And compare that to X/Twitter, there's people concerned that this ban is actually putting under 16s at greater risk, which, well, functionally it is. And people are thinking that it's largely the e-safety commissioner grinding an axe against mainly Twitter, X. I mean, asking them to self-assess. No, that's not good enough. The startup carried out a self-assessment and said, nope, I'm not a social media platform. No, this is just a debacle. It's a private messenger with no... right. It's, yeah. YouTube labelled the law as rushed, yes, and claims that banning children will make its platform less safe, yes. It's been closely watched, yes. It's going to... this is going to be a mess. Okay, 7 of 10... So 96% of Australian children 10 to 15 use social media, and that 7 out of 10 of those 96% had been exposed to harmful content, such as misogynistic. Well, what about misandristic? It's the focus on specific content like this makes it feel like it's being ideologically driven or special focus group driven. All right, so yep, no denying there's misogynistic content on the internet, but misandry and the other mistype words are just as bad. And people need to be aware that that content exists because the internet largely is unmoderated, quite frankly. And people need to be aware that that's sort of what the internet is. It's the almost free access to unlimited information. Information and data doesn't care, doesn't have a reason to care. It really doesn't. It doesn't have a vested interest. It's just information. It's just data. And yeah, there's this horrible stuff. I mean, anybody who was around on the internet in the early thousands would remember sites like gore sites like MeatSpin, or the various attempts to gore post each other, and common messaging, not messaging sites, websites, precursors to social media sites. There was all sorts of stuff where community moderators were working to try and hide that sort of stuff from the general user. But it was a case of people who went on the internet knew it wasn't going to be safe. And, well, that sort of self-awareness has gone by the wayside. So, I mean, yep, content promoting eating disorders and suicide and stuff. Yeah, it's not hard to find all sorts of information like that. But by the same token, it's not hard to find extremely positive stuff or stuff to help address issues like this. It's, yeah. More concerning, though, is 1 in 7 also reported experiencing grooming-type behaviour from adults or older children, and more than half said they've been a victim of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying, I do agree with your point, just walk away from it. I mean, it stays on the screen, walk away from it, not going to follow you. Well, can follow you into real life, in which case it's real-life bullying, and there's policies and procedures available to address those. But the grooming side of things, that's a concern. But if we're going to look at the grooming side of things, I mean, Roblox is not subject to the social media ban. All right, so YouTube a couple of days ago. I mean, they've been saying this really the whole time through, that, yep, exactly the same statement as before. Parents will lose their ability to supervise their accounts for the kids, yep, and content setting blockings, yep. And again, I've said before, try signing out of Google and go to YouTube without being logged in, and it will be a scary prospect. You'll be horrified at the sort of content that shows up to an unsigned in user on YouTube. Now, because you're not signed in, you can't then curate the feed or the algorithm to shape the algorithm to then show you something that's more palatable to your interests. I mean, to be honest, Google's probably got shadow accounts running to keep an idea of what a user based on your IP address and stuff is looking at. I mean, I've seen, even with logged in accounts, that depending on the device that's accessing YouTube and time of day, the recommendations change. So I can be sitting in front of my computer, I'll be getting a specific type of recommendations in my algorithm. I go across to watch stuff on Apple TV, and there's a YouTube app there that I'm signed into. During the middle of the day, the recommendations it puts up are vastly different to what's on the computer or the iPad or things like that. But later on in the evening, it changes the type and recommendation of content. So there's already a fairly detailed, I mean, I don't necessarily like what they're suggesting during the middle of the day, but hey, look, the algorithm's got a reasonably decent understanding. I wouldn't say it's great, but you can see it. You can see that it, even for the one account, it understands device and time of day usage patterns, I guess, in terms of what I largely watch on those different devices at those times of the day, and the recommendations are shaped likewise. So it's possible that it's going to do it for the non-logged in user based on device, but then that's going to raise questions about, is Google actually creating shadow accounts, running accounts? Does that breach what the intent of the law is? Blah, 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 blah. The communication minister responded by saying it's outright weird that YouTube is highlighting the dangers of its platform for children. No, you've been doing that, and so is the e-safety commissioner. YouTube's reminding us all it's not safe. It's a problem YouTube needs to fix. Well, they're just pointing out the content. There is a wealth of content out there, and on YouTube, some of which is not safe for children. And they have various means to limit access to that. But once you take the logged in user away from that, the safety mechanisms to prevent access to that sort of content go away. And the ability to monitor it by the parent goes away. Which just sort of suggests that the communications minister doesn't understand the tech, or doesn't understand the concept, didn't have it explained to her. And obviously they're turning to other sites. So yeah, YouTube's ban exemption was reversed in July. The most frequently cited platform with children aged 10 to 15 years saw harmful content. Given that it's probably the most widely used platform by children 10 to 15 years, that's not surprising that it then becomes the most frequently cited platform where they see harmful content. I don't trust Google as far as I can throw it, but this statement here is that, yep, the new law undermines more than a decade's work in building robust protections and parental controls that families rely on for a safer YouTube experience. I don't know about that. Yes, they've been trying, but again, the practical realities of how the internet works, you're always going to be chasing the problem. You're never really going to get ahead of it. And the same with this law. It's not going to get ahead of the problem as such. So this law will not fulfill its problems to make kids safer online, and will make kids less safe on YouTube, yet we understand. It's rushed regulation that misunderstands YouTube and the way young Australians use it. Yep, agree with that. Okay, anyone under 16 automatically signed out of the YouTube account cannot upload content or post comments. YouTube Kids is not part of the ban. Now, as we roll through, there's actually a video that pops up later on where we've got someone complaining about the idea that their that their channel is effectively going to be demonetized come 10 December, because they're going to lose all the under 16 user base, video commenters and stuff, and it ties into digital ID and all this, and so therefore every Australian user won't be able to access it. That's a bit Chicken Little. But, as I said before, this conspiracy-minded viewpoint can sometimes be acting as the canary in the coal mine. Wellbeing settings will be available to children, and so will no longer be available because they only work for account holders. The legislation, had failed to allow for adequate consultation. I agree with that. It certainly seemed that the consultation phases were rushed or very short, and then made you wonder, well, just how in depth had they been considering the problem? Okay, so Google's considered launching a legal challenge, but the I mean, and it finishes up with the same statements as before. All right, so we'll move across now to looking at, well, some data on how it's supposed to be enforced. It's going to be site-based. The government has admitted it won't be perfect in keeping underage users off the block sites. Yeah, it not going to be great. Now, this was put out yesterday. So, responsibility for enforcing the ban is down to the companies. And if children under 16 find their way onto the sites, they and their parents won't face penalties. Instead, the e-safety agency can take action against tech companies that aren't taking reasonable steps. This comes back to this whole consultation phase about what reasonable steps are. I think someone's been sold a bill of lies. There's companies that are selling snake oil that have gotten into the ear of the government and the e-safety commissioner, and it's not going to work well. So if you're going to penalise a company for not taking reasonable steps, you'd expect that list of reasonable steps to be well codified and available well before the commencement of the ban, i.e. before next Wednesday. You'd expect it to have been out for months for review and amendment stuff. E-safety hasn't specified exactly what social media companies need to do to avoid falling foul of the new laws. So you've got companies in a position that we're going to penalise you for not following the law and not using reasonable practices to stop violation. But we're not going to tell you what those reasonable practices are. This is obviously going to be tested in front of the courts. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. That's just excuse making. Providers need to deactivate or remove the accounts of users under 16 and stop those children from being able to immediately create new profiles to get around the plan. Includes geolocation check, hello VPNs, and verify that account holders are 16 or older. Hello VPNs. Social media platforms can confirm ages by checking someone's government-issued ID. They're required to offer at least one alternative, so users aren't forced to hand over their driver's license or passport. Then that's going to be personally sensitive data. It's not going to be well done. All right, companies have been rolling out age assurance technology, from video selfies to analysing account behaviour and metadata. And so this is the thing. So, like, you've got an account that's over 16 years old. In other words, the account has been in place for more than 16 years. Well, quite clearly, the account holder is over the age of 16. You're going to look at account behaviour. And this is, I have seen concerns raised about that particular issue. If you've got a parent whose kid has been accessing YouTube using the parent's account, there's going to be a lot of kid videos that have been watched under that parent account. Now, if the parent's not using YouTube themselves for much else, what's YouTube going to think? They're going to look at this account, which they may or may not have verified. Well, presumably they might have. But that's no guarantee that it's aged identified. They're going to look at the usage patterns and see that the usage patterns correlate to an under 16 user. What do? Do they ban the account? But the account doesn't belong to an under 16. The account belongs to an adult. But the usage pattern implies a primary use by an under 16. That's where the metadata falls down. Maybe it'll be a question like, do you understand what 6.7 is? And if you say yes, you're banned. Which one is your favourite wiggle? If you say yellow, you're banned. The government has acknowledged the ban won't be perfect. Yes. It's telling that they provide the analogy of underage consumption of alcohol. Yeah, technically you can't go and purchase alcohol and consume it as an under 18. But anybody who's grown up in the last couple of centuries knows that ain't going to stop anyone. And that it happens. Constantly happens. Anyway, cultural change. I don't think that's going to be the case. There's recalcitrance. No. It's not the albatross again around the neck, but it's going to be causing problems, I think, for the government, federal government, going forward. All right. Range of requirements for companies around the data they collect, making sure they don't discriminate against diverse groups. The discrimination is against under 16s. How does diversity play into that? Okay, there is regulatory guidance. I did read this before. Again, so a lot of this content, there's nothing hugely new in it, but obviously there's a lot more people. Yep, disappointing. YouTube agrees to adhere, so YouTube sort of folded. Yep, nothing new here. Under 10, lose the ability to create content, like and comment on videos, or to subscribe to other channels. That's going to be a problem because the subscription means, well, you're curating what you get to look at. Okay, so there's new screens starting to pop up. I've got a copy of an email, actually. I'll bring it up a little bit later on, showing what YouTube have sent out. It will access YouTube Amatrois videos that can access their accounts when they turn 16. Company claims parents will be unable to use parental controls. Yep, they've said that. Criticise new laws failing to protect children from risks. Yeah, let kids less safe. That's a repeat of what they've already said. So, yeah, nothing new there. We'll look at the guidelines shortly. Okay, updated list of sites. Okay, from a couple of days ago. So at the moment, there's been no big change to the main platforms. However, there are people concerned, well, where the under 16 is going to go? What are they going to do? So some will move to platforms like Discord and Messenger. Well, I don't know why they're not age restricting, other than someone's got a personal or political axe to grind. I don't understand Lemonade or the other one. Then they don't seem to be. I mean, they're quite popular, I guess, but I've not seen a lot of discussion about it. There's a lot of people saying, "Oh no, this is it," other than people saying, "Oh, we're going to look at it." So yeah, okay. So Google Classroom. So I talked before about that. Now the issue about Google Classroom is that in the context of how the schools use their Chromebooks and stuff is a lot of the accounts, or the accounts they set up for the students, are Google accounts. And then they have access to Gmail and other stuff. All right. Roblox, yeah, again, that's Steam and Steam Chat. Given the content that's on Steam, WhatsApp's a concern. LinkedIn. Well, if there's anyone under 16 on LinkedIn, there's a problem. In fact, maybe we should just ban LinkedIn full stop. Blah, blah, blah. Exemptions, classes haven't changed. Platforms that are exempt are not guaranteed to stay that way, which means that the rules are arbitrarily enforced. And, yeah. It's... I really don't see this going well. Okay, so nothing new here. These aren't changing. There's been no changes. Okay, as we move through again. Okay, responsibility lies with the apps. Again, in the last couple of days. Has there been any new information? Nope, nothing. The onus lies with the social media platforms to keep the children offline. Apps need to keep... Did I already cover this? No, it is a different article. It is a different article. Anyway, yep. So there's nothing new coming through here. The best time frame was 2 weeks in advance to notify users. Now, like I'm going to show you that YouTube message. My powers don't come into effect until December 10. That's for people who are concerned about her role already. Statements like that are chilling. We've been telling companies what the best practice is. Well, the other articles just said you've got no idea what best practice is. So, yeah, Meta's already sending out messages due to laws in Australia saying you won't be able to use social media until you've turned 16. Can't return to your account until you've turned 16. We'll let you know when you can. Verify your age to keep using Snapchat. Snapchat says it disagrees with its inclusion but will comply. TikTok opposed the ban but said it would enforce it. TikTok will ask for selfie IDs and a photo of government-issued ID. Now, for people who know that TikTok's Chinese-owned, I mean, your conspiracy-minded people are going to be like, well, you're handing over all this data to people that you don't know are going to look after it. Well, Reddit and Kick added to the ban. Both will deactivate accounts for users aged under 16. X, supposedly not as popular, but will ban. YouTube is keeping on fighting. YouTube also uses an age estimation model to determine the ages of users currently. If the model incorrectly determines a person's age, users can verify their birth date by submitting government ID, credit card, or selfie. Yeah, there's reasons why I think people are a little bit concerned about that sort of approach. They should be. Okay, now we're going to just double check some of the other news sources in Australia just to check. Again, from a day or two back, Meta's, yep, we know about that. The ban is not exactly a ban. Well, it is. Now, the ABC is more in line with the current government than they were the government before it. So if an agency was going to support it, the ABC would be more inclined. All right, so no changes. This is an interesting clause, even if it does work as designed. There's no way it is going to work as designed. Because it is a ban. Yeah, so they're trying to water down. So this article's trying to water down the impact of, oh no, it's not really a ban. Oh, they've got to, it's not all companies. Oh, they've got to try to, but not. Yeah, no, it's a ban. Ban. They're being prevented. That's the verbiage used by the actual agency itself. Anyway, okay, so no change to the list. They're going to move to other accounts, other services. Platforms have to change. Must comply with the laws or face a $50 million fine, but compliance doesn't mean what to the reasonable steps. People won't get fined, the companies will. Social media companies don't actually need to be certain of your date of birth. There's no need to verify age, they just need to make a guess. See, this is this, and this comes back to, this is those well-intentioned guesses, I guess. And I mean, the example coming out of the UK with the face verification and stuff, that ended rather poorly, or is going on rather poorly. And what we're expecting this to be any better. So the idea, I guess, for adults, ideally very little would change. In fact, nothing should change, except a lot of whinging from the under 16s. But I suspect there are people who are looking at this very suspiciously as a means to enforce digital ID more ubiquitously. There you go, that's a big word. There's also, now we're starting to see the concerns about how effective the verification methods are going to be and how safe that data is going to be. Now, just because I said it, I'm just some random bunch of pixels on the internet. What do I know? Well, I'm not going to make an appeal to authority. You can take my words as they are. All right. Okay, so here's the email coming back to it. We're writing to share an important change to how under 16-year-old users access YouTube in Australia. Due to a new law, users must be 16 or older to sign into YouTube. Okay, that's the account. This means that starting 10th of December, users under 16 years old will be automatically signed out. Wait for next Wednesday, see who can still use their Google account. This includes any supervised pre-teen and teen accounts you managed, like family accounts, I guess. What this means for me, parental controls only work when your pre-teen or teen is signed in. Don't have any of those accounts. So the settings you've chosen will no longer apply if they watch while signed out. This includes specific channels you've blocked and the content setting you've chosen, which is true. As in, so if you've taken steps to curate what YouTube shows, that goes away. While they may still be able to watch YouTube signed out, they will not be able to access certain features, including likes, subscriptions, memberships, creating playlists. For teens who have a YouTube channel, it will no longer be visible to other users, and they will lose the ability to leave comments and upload new videos. Oh, yep. Users are always able to download or delete their data and content they've created. When your preteen or teen turns 16, they'll be able to sign into YouTube again and reinstate their channel. Because Google has a policy of deleting accounts that are inactive for 2 years or more. So that'll be interesting to see what they do here for the underage accounts that have to be locked out. Okay, so the security issues associated with it. Sending sensitive data carries the potential for risk, cybersecurity experts have warned. Well, I just said that previously as well. There's a lot of problems with the way that Snapchat in particular is going to do age verification. They'll offer the chance to prove they're 16 or above in 3 different ways. They can use Connect ID, which links to bank accounts. They can use Singaporean software KID, which uses a selfie, or upload government-issued identification. Blah, blah, blah. Disconnecting, no. Okay, there's people saying that, yep, it's not going to work. More privacy-conscious solutions, such as mandating age verification at the device, operating system, or app store level. Yeah, that's interesting. Single sign-on. I mean, if you've validated who you are for a single sign-on point of view, then you should be able to use that single sign-on across the place. I mean, that's kind of what I forget the name. Real ID? No, it wasn't Real ID. Google had basically introduced a system. It's years back when this was first rolled out. It was called, might have been called, no, it wasn't called Real ID. But basically, Google is one of the main companies pushing it forward. There are other big companies pushing for it as well. It's why you can go to many different sites and sign in using your Google account or your Apple ID or your Facebook account or a whole bunch of different accounts that you can use to have this single sign-on approach across multiple services. I honestly can't recall what the name of it was, but it's a similar sort of thing. So if that account has validated your age and everything else, then surely using that to single sign-on to other service providers shouldn't be an issue, in theory. There are a lot of problems with Snapchat and others that are approaching age verification. If they're going to use KID, yep, data provided by young Australians will leave Australia because it's Singaporean-based. Once it's outside Australia, the Australian government's regulations are out of the window because you don't have any control of it. Which is kind of funny because a number of years ago, I think it was Australian Defence Force, changed how they managed certain allowances and things like that. And so they issued defence members a travel card, a diner's card, I think. But the phone support and everything else appeared to be hosted outside of Australia. So you had, people outside Australia becoming intimately aware of Australian defence members' movements and allowances and other bits and pieces. Anyway. The Australian Information Commissioner, National Privacy Regulator, said the Privacy Act should apply to data. A cybersecurity expert with a research interest in child safety said alarm bells started to ring when he heard that two of the options involved sending a selfie or government-issued ID. Yep, lots of cases of data being breached and lost and misplaced. We don't know details how they'll handle the data. Yep, fair enough. These are all fair things, and it's a case of why wasn't this incorporated into the consultation phase was there a consultation phase? Major data breaches almost every month. The first time that this data goes missing, I don't think there'll be heads on pikes, but the government shouldn't outlast something like that when they've been banging the drum of, it's to protect the kiddies, and they're now been directly responsible for the reason why so much of their data gets breached. Deep breath. All right. However, legal challenges. The first court challenge has been lodged, and the government says it will not be intimidated by legal threats. Yeah, I've heard of that before from governments. A digital freedom advocacy group and two representative young Australians have filed proceedings in the High Court challenging the incoming social media age ban. Now, this was speculated about a month back. I know I've covered it previously, that they were waiting. Everybody was sort of looking at each other, waiting to see who was going to lodge the first court case and what representative under 16s they were going to grab for the purpose. Now, the federal government, acting a bit like the Victorian state government during lockdown, ignoring saying that they're not going to be intimidated by legal threats. It's being challenged in the High Court on the grounds that it restricts young teens' implied right to freedom of political communication. I don't like that this is the reason why it's been pushed forward, because it just means that political advocacy is going to be used as the stick to beat everything back. I think there's better arguments to be made to challenge it, but okay, well, if it's what gets it through, it gets it through. It claims that the laws are grossly excessive. Fair enough. Trespass on the constitutional right of freedom of political communication. Australia's constitution doesn't have explicit free speech, for example. It's a pretty decent constitution, but you can't look at the way Australia does things, or the fact Australia has a constitution, and think it has constitution protections like in the US, for example. The ban is disproportionate and outsources parental responsibility to the government and unelected bureaucrats. That's targeting the e-safety commissioner, who is unelected. It's a direct... Okay, yeah. So they're saying, well, it stops young people from coming to their political parties. You can say the first half of what they've just said, and I fully agree. The fact that they're like, oh, it's because they can't do political things. Nope. Political activism, yeah, everyone should be able to do it, but I don't think that's the stick you should be trying to beat the government back with on this. Okay, so representative members. We're disappointed in a lazy government that blanket bans under 16s rather than investing in programs to help kids be safe on social media. They should protect kids with safeguards, not silence. I mean, great statements. Just stop there. Don't then say you're stopping kids from accessing our political party. If you personally think that kids shouldn't be on social media, stay off it yourself, but don't impose it on me and my peers, said one of the nominees. Well, that's a pretty decent statement. Communications Minister appeared to address the case, saying federal government remained firm in its commitment to implement the laws next Wednesday. One of the things I'd seen in relation to this was the suggestion that it's not looking to overturn the legislation or prevent it from being implemented at all. They're just looking for a 6-month delay, which I don't think is enough to address the issues with it. But despite the fact we're receiving threats and legal challenge by people with ulterior motives, left-wing see, it's hard not to look at this then as becoming an ideological bulwark. That's a word for it, I think, where you've got ideology getting in the way of good legislation. Albanese Labor government remains steadfastly on the side of parents. Well, what parents? There's very little consultation. We'll not be intimidated by threats. We'll not be intimidated by big tech on behalf of Australian parents. We stand firm. Authoritarianism, go on. Okay, so the implied right under Australia's constitution emerged in the 1990s when the High Court held that citizens must be able to engage in political communication to inform their electoral choices. Okay, so it's not, as I said, it's not an explicit right in the Constitution. I was like, I don't recall the Australian Constitution saying that. But yeah, okay, so it comes out of a court decision from the 1990s. It's fair enough. The implied right is not absolute and can be subject to reasonable restrictions. And presumably this is where the government's going to mount its defence. So a challenge based on the fact they restrict political communication is one of 3 legal options, which is, well, like I said, was discussed previously. And I'm disappointed that it's the one that they took. Okay. Although the coalition voted in favour of the social media age limit a year ago, opposition communications spokeswoman Mr. McIntosh on Wednesday expressed concern about the laws. The coalition did support the ban, but ever since then questioned whether or not it's going to work. Well, quite a high risk of failure. Now, that's the opposition being the opposition, but I think there's merit to what she's had to say. She's not surprised by the legal challenge. Asked if she reserved the right to withdraw support for the social media ban if there are unintended consequences. I said, of course, yeah. So it's not as bilateral, universally supported. And now there's more coming to light about what the Communications Minister and the E-Safety Commission are doing. And, well, is it rorting taxpayer funds? Is it doing things that they shouldn't? People are getting concerned, rightly concerned. So the Comms Minister spent nearly $100,000 on flights to New York to spruik the social media ban. So $95,000 on return flights for 3 people, for the minister and 2 staffers, to attend the General Assembly, the UN General Assembly. $34,000 just for her ticket. I'm guessing that's first class. $38,000 for the Deputy Chief of Staff. I'm guessing also first class. And the Assistant Secretary for Online Safety, $22,000. I'm guessing business class. I mean, I've not flown internationally for a while. Accommodation and transport also total around $22,000 for 3 days. Okay, you're in General Assemblies in town. You're going to struggle to find a decent accommodation. But the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister were already there. And so the Comms Minister was there to basically highlight this. $100,000 on it. Due to fly early alongside the PM, but was delayed by several days due to the Optus outage. I mean, I'm guessing the PM flew on the VIP transport that the Air Force maintains. And the Optus outage was still ongoing when they flew. Yeah, okay. Some of this is hindsight type stuff, but Wells should not have left her post during the 000 crisis. Yeah, so for those not aware of it, Optus, operated by Singtel, had a network outage. And normally most sort of network outages, things like 000 still work, either by failing over to another provider. I mean, you should technically, even if you don't have a phone with an activated SIM, be able to dial 000 from any phone in Australia, in theory. What happened here with the Optus outage was that the entire network for Optus failed and phones weren't then swapping over to other providers for 000 coverage or calls. And so there were a number of 000 calls that went unanswered, and because the system just didn't know they'd been made, and it is alleged that people died as a result. And so we've got all sorts of fun coming out of it. And it's not just the only time it's happened. It's happened a few times as well. All right, complaining about it. Okay, an event the Australian government hosted in New York on protecting kids in the digital age cost almost $70,000. Okay, people are wondering how the minister will actually make the ban work. They spent over $70,000 to spruik its success to the UN. Hasn't succeeded in anything. It was just a PR trip. Yep. When asked about the cost of a trip during the National Press Club address, it's worth going and have a look. I haven't seen the actual address, but the questions after apparently are pretty loaded, pretty decent. The office had been transparent about the flights. The reason you know about these things is because we're transparent about them. Well, that, and if you go before Senate estimates, that'll get disclosed. That event fueled global momentum in this space. That's trash. No, it didn't. A number of different jurisdictions come out from that moment to announce they're going to do exactly what Australia's doing because they want control. So yeah, there's increasing criticism of the performance of the ministers. So yep, other one was Channel 9. This is Sydney Morning Herald, chasing after the same thing in an at times hostile National Press Club appearance. So the National Press Club is an institution in Canberra. Basically, the press, journalists, all get together. They have someone come along and speak at them for a bit, and then they get to ask questions. A lot of the time, it's fairly benign. I mean, some good stuff comes out of the presentations made there, but sometimes, just like government, Parliament sitting, it can be entertaining when either salacious stuff gets raised by the person speaking, or the journalists decide to latch on And it looks like this was the case this week. All right, so blah, blah, blah. Nothing new from the other article. Okay. Transparent. Doesn't say everything. So it's close to $200,000 for a 3-day trip. I think a lot of people see that as excessive. And blah, 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 blah. So yeah, people said it's a PR trip when it hasn't even worked or been implemented just yet. Now, if they're going to do it 12 months down track and showing that, yes, it's worked wonderfully and it's all sunshine and happiness and rainbows here in Australia, and under 16s don't know how to use the internet anymore, great. Go and do it. Spruik your success. Don't go counting chickens before they've been banned from the internet. So, yeah. All right. And obviously now we're getting more pushback. People are starting to separate. Okay, no changes there. So the opposition is now starting to distance itself, which is an expansion on what was said in that previous article. Google will comply. Yep, no changes there. This is the same statements as before. The communications minister saying it's YouTube's problem. They're defending the trip. Okay, they've mixed a couple of things together. Obviously, people who've had impact due to online bullying and things like that are going to welcome this sort of stuff, but it's asking the question about how systemic the issue is and whether this is the most appropriate path to correction. People have similar sort of things. You see responses like this over time in history towards things like drunk driving laws or mandatory seatbelt laws, where prior to it, people were like, well, how much of a problem is it? And it's not till afterwards that it can be effectively measured just how effective mandatory seatbelt usage or mandatory bike helmets are, or that sort of stuff. I don't know that that's going to be the case here with the social media ban. So, yeah, I mean, you've got people losing children and stuff. Get your kids off devices and get off social media as well. I don't know about that. It's like someone saying, because somebody's had no, that analogy wasn't going to work anyway. Yep, criticizing the trip. Okay, so things like this. I mean, there needed to be more focus on this. If you wanted to really sell the ban effectively, okay, if it bleeds, it leads. But I think people look at examples like this as being isolated. No need to change the way the entire world works because of it. Give me a sec. Interesting stuff going on all over the channels at the moment, which is good. Engagement is good. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a bit botched anyway. Now the problem. Okay, we're saying, oh no, these things are going to be wonderful and they're going to work well and be perfect. We've got an example right here, yesterday, of Meta's AI wrongly banning Australian businesses. Now, Just saying, oh, no, these companies are going to be perfect at identifying and isolating under 16s. Well, you've got examples here where these regulatory processes inside their systems have gone haywire and banning accounts of businesses and stuff like this because they've misidentified what the system's done or flagging things inaccurately. So the modeling skill, maybe. You've got people being banned. Now, does it say they're flagged for child exploitation content, though neither had posted material that violated Meta's policies? One of the businesses had the accounts restored with limited functionality, while the other remained suspended. New data from the telecommunications industry ombudsperson shows more than 1,500 Australians have complained about digital platforms in 2023, with complaints rising 30% in 2024. Watch this space. Account access issues including blocks and bans, 1/3 of complaints, largest single category. Major companies, yep. When somebody's accidentally locked out of their account, this is going to be important going forward. When somebody's accidentally locked out of their social media or cloud storage account and the platform is not responding, there is nowhere for them to go. The timing, coincidental? Yep. The enforcement relies partly on the same AI systems flagging innocent users. Yet the Communications Minister and the E-Safety Commissioner are advocating that these things are super mega accurate. Even for people who have paid to be verified, nah. Unlucky. It's yeah. So suspension means loss of brand visibility, etc. Okay, the influencers, well, banning influencers would be a good thing. Meta uses a combination of people and technology to identify accounts that violate its policies, publishes data about content removals and appeals in its community standards enforcement report. The company says it's constantly working to improve enforcement systems. I think as well, coming out of the period 2020 to 2024, particularly those two US presidential elections, and then Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter/X, and what then came out of it about the undue influence that US politicians and politics were having on who and what was banned on social media. Anybody who paid even the remotest amount of attention during that time frame to this sort of stuff would have to be absolutely terrified at the idea of what the government is currently selling in terms of what they want to achieve. And one of the people who was at the centre of all of it back then is currently the Australian E-Safety Commissioner. And it was shown that it was overtly political in how they did it, ideologically based, and yet they sold it as, no, this is protection for the kiddies. And yet now we're expected to swallow the same message, and they've been doing it right, properly. It's yeah. A digital duty of care. I mean, that's a good phrase, but they're not applying it properly. Big tech, yeah. I mean, I'm sure the comments are going to be people saying, yep, permanently banned because AI usage, blah. Linking, like, highlighting examples like robo-debt, which that was a government failure. We covered that as well. Yeah, it's very arbitrary. You can expect a lot more of this with a ban coming on December the 10th. AI will go crazy and just ban random people regardless of age. Yeah, I reckon so. The capricious nature of social media. Yes. All right. Now, there's a couple more before we hit the end of this particular topic. Okay. Video that was coming out of the press club. Okay, teens flee to new apps. I don't think so. Well says she'll ban those too. Yeah, okay, there's no change there. This is Lemonade and other things, which makes me wonder just how much it's actually going on and how much is actually tied to press releases by those companies drumming up support. Any coverage is good coverage. This is during the National Press Club. The question you're desperate to know the answer to is who is getting slapped with the first $50 million fine on 10th of December? Regulation really acts fast. Certainly not that fast. Well, you're pushing this through. The E-Safety Commission will send notices to the 10 tech companies on its ban list, asking how many underage accounts were on December 9th, and then how many remain on December 11th. Ooh, that's going to be interesting data to see. Okay, we've seen estimates and guesses of numbers already. We'll just kick back and wait a week to see what comes through. And that assurance can take some time to come through as well. Blah, 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 blah. People are going to other apps. I still don't think those apps are as popular as people are saying. It's whack-a-mole. Or if they've moved from one place to another, we'll ban that next place. It's reactive, not proactive. No, we're doing this because it's being proactive for safety and health. Yeah, I mean, that's the intent. But what you're doing in reality is being reactive. Oh, we're slapping this because people are here. Oh, no, they moved over here. Now we're slapping that. It's just... I mean, it's like when Dig was the big social media website. Well, not social media website. Was the in essence it was a social media website, and before that it was MySpace. It was MySpace, then Dig, and then Reddit in terms of where people went for online chat or that sort of content. Now, MySpace, well, obviously, have sort of evolved into other stuff as well, but there was a very clear migration of effectively global user base from one provider to the next, as they made various mistakes that hurt their services. But you're forcing these changes on these service providers now. People are just going to go somewhere else. And then you force those same changes over there. And then it's going to follow and do the same thing again and again and again and again. Social media bans better left to parents. Yep. That's fair. I mean, TikTok users and creators saying, look, okay, kids don't have social media because they're too young. Okay, there's no change there. Realistically, I think it's the parents' job to monitor the stuff. True. Reality, if you do ban it, kids will still find a way to get on it. True. There's going to be a lot of monitoring discussions and chats about everything that's out there because it's pretty scary. But it's down to, it's the government trying to be the parenting. And anytime that happens, it never works well. The ban will cause only a superficial reduction in views or earnings. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we've got people already saying that they think their Australian YouTube channels and stuff are going to basically disappear in effectiveness because of it. Blah, blah, blah. Criticised the social media ban, saying it was stupid and likely to have unintended consequences. Yes. Why don't we do something in our education policy to get more people informed? True. Yeah, I mean, all fair statements. Now, talk about like YouTube videos and stuff that come up, like in the content that's been provided. This actually came across my suggested path a little while back. Oh, see, I'm even signed out. So The audio's not coming through. So the end of my channel is near. And it's to do with the whole point behind it is that whilst the 10th of December may be the under 16 social media ban, you've got this digital push for digital ID and everything else coming along with it. And yeah, funnily enough, it signed me out as well. I wasn't signed out before. The idea being that this idea of digital ID, this under 16 social media ban, is the foot in the door to force digital ID upon everybody, and that it's going to drive Australian users off the net. And people who have a predominantly Australian user base are going to find their channels demonetized or effectively destroyed because their user base will no longer exist because the under 16s can't come and comment, like, etc. And it becomes a problem. This is where I think it goes a little bit down the conspiracy track. Now, yeah, there may be the frameworks for these things in place. And, I mean, if you'd asked me 6 or 12 months ago, is this under 16 media ban, social media ban ever going to go into force? I'd say no. But it is. And so what was once firmly in the realm of conspiracy is going to take place. So all this other stuff, which is conspiracy, well, maybe we should take a closer listen to it. It seems that there's this content creator and a bunch of other providers, content creators out there, have also latched onto this idea that this digital ID concept is going to be forced on Australian users and almost like a real ID usage. Now, I will link in the video when this goes up later what the Australian digital ID system is meant to be from the government itself. Now, it takes an extremely narrow reading, or well, extremely broad reading, depending on how you want to look at it, to get out of it what content these content creators are alleging is coming down the pipeline. Are they overreacting? Maybe. But they feel the fear. Now, do we diminish the fear by saying, look, it's unrealistic? Well, look, no, they think that there's a real problem. We go through, I mean, if we want to be fair to people, I mean, they think it's a real problem. Therefore, to them, it is a real problem. So how do we address it? Like, well, people say, well, you don't feed into delusions. Well, we've been doing that for a lot of other things of late. And like I said, this under 16 media ban, social media ban, was once well and truly in the realm of conspiracy. So we need to sort of at least be willing to hear what they have to say. And I mean, it is one potential outcome. I don't think it's going to happen on the time frame that they're spruiking. If you're going to use the digital ID or push for that sort of stuff, you're looking another couple of years down track. I mean, they need to get the under 16 social media ban success under their belt first. And it is carrying more back to the sort of concepts that were being talked about back in the early 2000s about limiting internet access and usage and things like that. So, yeah. And we do have the regulatory guidelines back here. The tech trial. Okay. Age check certification scheme based in the UK. All right, so here we go. We've got a problem already. Funded by those people. Okay. The trial did not make policy recommendations or endorse specific types of age assurance, and did not reflect a complete assessment of all relevant issues. Focused on assessing whether age assurance technologies are technically feasible. Technically feasible and practically implementable and being useful don't have to be in the same bucket. Yeah. Okay. Age assurance can be done. Yeah, no. I mean, I'm going to save this, but I don't like... these are the sort of things that... This is what they're issuing as guidance. So you're going to expect that people implementing are going to follow. And it's just... It's the sort of document that should terrify people, quite frankly.